we've gotten some really great information, and we'd like to be able to share this information with our citizen base. And so Councilmember Ingram and myself and Chief Hawkins are here this evening, and we are going to, we're going to take some time and we're going to go through a few different pages of documents that we've received, primarily to give some updates in regards to police policy and some of the things that are some of the hot topics right now. Before we get into that though, Councilmember Ingram has some.
Chief, are you recording this? Because you might have an option if you record it to push it out later. If we.
Oh, I am recording it.
Okay, good. Just want to make
sure. I am recording it. No, that's okay. That's perfect. So I am recording it, and I will push it out. And we will still, if there are questions that come in after the fact, we will still make sure that we get answers to those questions. One of the things that both Councilmember Ingram and I did want to tell everybody before we start is that we are not going to guarantee that we have every answer to every question. There will very likely be some questions that we just don't have the answer to, and that we're just still working to be able to figure out how to give the answers to those questions. But what we will do is we will get the answer. So Councilmember Ingram does have, I'm going to end the screen share because I know we have some other information that will be coming in just a little bit. But Councilmember Ingram does have some great updates to kind of share before we get started. She is probably one of the biggest cheerleaders for the 2020 census on the council. And I'm very glad for that because of how important the census is. But Councilmember Ingram, I will turn the floor over to you, and you can go ahead and kick us off.
All right, so welcome everybody. So I'm getting ready. My computer is freezing a little bit. I'm getting ready to share some information with you in regards to kind of elections, census, and COVID. As soon as my computer does what it's doing to open up the document, loading the document, I'll be able to share it with you. And so once again, I just kind of want to reiterate what Councilmember Waddell was saying. We thank you so much for kind of being a part of this and taking your time to just learn more about our policies. And I want to give a special thanks to Chief Hawkins for taking time out of her day to assist us with this, as it is very important that we learn. So I'm getting ready to start my screen share. Okay, let's see, here's screen share. Oh, Councilmember Waddell, can you make me able to do the screen share, please?
Now, y'all know, I don't know how this works. So let me,
remember we went to,
okay, here we go. I got it. You should be able to share now.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Come on. Oh, there it is.
So I want to say this to everybody. I am technologically challenged. So I have the privilege of kind of doing the technology. I probably should have just given Councilmember Ingram the login because she probably knows how to do this better than me. But y'all just bear with us because I'm going to figure it out. And I'm going to get better at this the more we do it. But go ahead. You got the screen share.
All right. So here we go. All right. We all will become better out. All right. So screen share. Share. All right. Can everybody see that? Okay. So it says welcome. All right. So this is kind of our agenda for today. We did our welcome. So we're getting ready to have various updates. We're going to talk about COVID-19. We're going to talk about census, and then we're going to talk about election 2020. Oops. Okay. Sorry. I guess it's pausing. Okay, is that better to see? Or I don't know if it changed. Okay, all right. So, and then of course our policy breakdown, it's changed a little bit, but the other slides are updated. Updates. So we are still currently in phase 2 of reopening our state. As Fayetteville, North Carolina, and Cumberland County, we're being guided by our state government legislative, and so we are currently in phase 2, which has been extended to July 17th, 2020. So that is upcoming, right? We are in a place where it is mandatory for us to have face masks. Let's talk about they must be worn in public places where physical distance is not possible. Business employees and customers wearing coverings for the following industries: retail, restaurants, personal care, child care centers, camps, staff, public transportation, North Carolina government agencies, construction, manufacturing, agriculture, meat processing plants, healthcare, long-term care facilities. And so there are some exceptions as well. There's our penalties. So the exceptions are documented medical conditions for children ages 11 and younger. If you're working out, exercising, also, but still being distanced. And when you're at home, right? And so then you also have your penalties. Customers can be charged with trespassing for not wearing a face covering. So if a business says, hey, if you want to come in the store, please get a mask. And if you refuse, that would be your charge. Businesses can be cited for not enforcing customers and staff to not wear masks. And before we go on to the next piece, I want to say, if you leave home, remember our 3 W's: wear, wait, and wash. All right. And so let's get ready to talk about census. So really simple stuff. Can you all see that? I'm not sure what, can y'all see the census screen? Okay, so with census, there are 3 ways to take the census, right? We have the online option, which is my2020census.gov. You have 13 languages available to you, and I'll also drop that link in the chat box. You have the phone number, or you can take a screenshot of this. The phone number, which will also prompt 13 languages for you, and then also you should have received something in the mail that speaks to responding to the census, right? And so I hope you all have taken the census. Let's talk about election 2020, right? Oh, one more thing about COVID-19. I'm so sorry that I skipped this. So there will be free testing, free COVID-19 testing happening at various locations, including Fayetteville State University, which was made possible out of some funding that they received from the CARES Act. And so you see the dates here, and they're walk-up, no appointment necessary. Parental permission and presence is required for persons aged 13 to 17. And so anybody who's over the age of 13 can receive this testing, all right? All right, let's go talk about elections. So updates. I kind of put this backwards. So I want to talk about the June update, which is kind of down here. So as of right now, it says some precincts may need to be moved or combined due to lack of room for social distancing in their current location or due to previous safety issues. Those precincts include Eastover 2, Cross Creek 9, Pierce's Mill 4, Cross Creek 6, Cross Creek 10, Hope Mills 2A, and could not hear anything during the meeting, but as far as we know, Smith Rec will not be affected. And I chuckle a little bit because all these are my voting precincts, majority of them are. Board of Election does need help with recruiters, recruiting workers. So if you are available, please come out and sign up. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. My computer is accepting a phone call. Oops. How do I? resume share. I'm sorry, y'all. So they are looking for, that scared me. They are looking for recruiter workers to come and help out with election season. And so just know Board of Elections is taking this extremely seriously, right? So we want to hop up to the front, the beginning of this, and it says Tuesday, July 14th. So this is upcoming at 1 p.m. Board of Elections will hold their monthly meeting, and so their new business will include one-stop proposals. So that is your early voting locations, polling site changes, and precinct combinations. This is extremely important for you to know. And as you always know, on election day or the week of, you start to see more combinations happening and more changes happening. So please, if you can screenshot this, we want you to be as informed as possible. Here is your schedule for the remainder of the year. They do have it September 4th. First day ballots are made available for general election. Absentee by mail, October. Your registration books close for general election. Your one-stop voting begins October 15th, which is right around the corner, believe it or not. And then your last day request the absentee ballot by mail for general election is October 27th. And then they have the sick and disabled absentee ballot request begins 8 a.m. for general election. And then one-stop voting ends October 31st. And then November, last day to apply for sick and disabled, general election 5 p.m. And November 3rd, hand delivered, last day Board of Elections to receive absentee ballots at 5 p.m. And then same as November 3rd, sent by mail, absentee ballots must be postmarked. And then of course, general election is that day. And then so I put the link here where you can go find all your information about your local Board of Elections. All right, and so we are ready for our policy and procedure breakdown. And so we will start with accreditation. And so it is one of the things I can say, quick question, can you all see me or can you see the screen?
I see both you and the screen.
Okay, perfect. And so one of the things that I want people to know about the Fayetteville Police Department, not only do we have state mandates, we have federal mandates, we have a constitutional mandate, but we also have other standards that we follow that ensure best practices for law enforcement. So one of the two that we have is CALEA, and then we also have Nobel. And so what that means is we have our Fayetteville Police Department as a department who has standards. And then what we do is we take it an extra mile here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and then we look at our other organizations, and we say, okay, let's look at what they are doing and kind of look into taking the next step, taking it to the next step, right? And so here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, we are very, very pleased and proud to say that we are accredited by CALEA. And I'm getting ready to do a screen share of their page. CALEA, there it is. And then share. All right, can y'all see CALEA? Are y'all able to see CALEA? Yes, no, maybe? Okay.
Yes, ma'am, we can see it.
All right, so with CALEA, CALEA is governed by a commission board composed of 21 members. By mandate, a board allows for 11 law enforcement practitioners with balance selected from the public and private sectors. They maintain a professional staff, managed by an executive director. CALEA operates as an independent nonprofit 501c3 It is not a part or behold to any governmental entity, and fees paid by public safety agencies defray the commission's major operating costs. The purpose of CALEA is to improve the delivery of public safety services by maintaining a body of professional standards that support administration and accreditation programs. And so some of these programs look like agency leadership, serves as a research management tool, establishes trusted process and best practices. And so when we start to talk about those best practices look like when we see instances like Mr. George Floyd, or I would say Breonna Taylor, when we see unfortunate murders like that, this organization helps our law enforcement take it in and say, all right, best practices. How do we stop this from happening? And so it's, as Chief Hawkins says, different law enforcement guidance. And so it's another set of standards that we kind of get to follow and be guided by. And then you have your agency personnel and the community, fostering community awareness, which is major here in Fayetteville. We are strong and big on community involvement. And they also work to create organizational transparency. And I can say Chief Hawkins is very adamant about transparency. And so then I also want to talk about Nobel. Nobel, their mission is to ensure equity in the administration of justice and the provision of public service to all communities, and to serve as coincidence of law enforcement by being committed to justice by action. And I think that's where we all are in this time of life. We're seeking justice by action. And their vision is, the goal of Nobel is to be recognized as a highly competent public service organization that is at the forefront of providing solutions to law enforcement issues and concerns, as well as ever-changing needs of our community. And so to know that our law enforcement agency is a part of these two major staples of law enforcement entities makes me feel even better about the proactive efforts that we work towards as a body. And I also want to say that Chief Hawkins is, I believe, the treasurer of Nobel. And so, you know, I just got chills saying that. So to know all of the great work she's doing to ensure that we are working towards justice by action, you know, I would say we are blessed in this city. Let's go back to our...
Councilwoman Ingram, can I add one thing?
Yes, ma'am.
One, you've done an awesome job, first of all, of understanding the accreditation and the standards. But I want to share with the community a couple things. Besides Nobel, we seek all professional law enforcement entities like the International Association of Chiefs of Police, because there are not just me, but other members of our police department that sit on committees. I personally sit on International Association of Chiefs of Police Community Policing Committee nationally. But the reason why, more importantly, why accreditation is important and what we're seeing nationwide is it is volunteer. And there are not all departments, all agencies are not required to maintain or look for best practices. That's why it's important. So just want to share that. And we're still looking at things. When I say we, I think of law enforcement, because I know what we're doing, but I also sit on the Presidential Commission on Law Enforcement and Administration of Justice, and we're having recent discussions talking on these topics, saying that we passed certain things that really need to evolve consistently across the board for all law enforcement entities, not just here us in Fayetteville, because any one of us can drive in another jurisdiction, and we want to know what the laws should be that are being enforced and how they should be enforced across the board. So that's some things that are being talked about right now on the Presidential Commission today, right now. So I just want to share that as well.
Thank you, Chief Hawkins. And so the next piece is we will go into is, let me find it, there it is, and start my screen share. What next piece we will go into is internal affairs unit. And so I'm gonna do an active screen share because I believe in access and I believe that people need to know what's at their fingertips. And so let me switch over to the actual web page while we talk about internal affairs. Can y'all see that where it says complaint? All right, I see some head nods. All right, so complaints and compliments and complaints, right? We get both the best worlds. And so there are a few things I'm gonna show you that I just know that many citizens don't really realize that they're at our fingertips. So our internal affairs is a fact-finding internal investigation unit. Let me say that again. It is a fact-finding internal investigation unit under the direction of our beautiful, smart, amazing Chief of Police. Internal Affairs has the authority and responsibility to initiate and investigate into citizens' complaints of employee misconduct and performance. And so I'm going to go off a ledge and say, when it says employee misconduct and performance, so you could probably be giving somebody a compliment, but that compliment could possibly be a misconduct, even though it was a compliment. So it goes both ways. Internal Affairs will take the complaints during normal working hours and refer the complaint to the appropriate supervisor if the complaint is regarding an employee that is on duty. Once again, if that complaint is referring to an employee that is on duty. If the employee is not on duty, the complaint will be documented and forwarded to the appropriate supervisor for further investigation. It says generally, it is the responsibility of first-line supervisors to investigate citizens' complaint involving their personnel. Internal Affairs will conduct their internal investigations into serious allegations of misconduct, as well as conduct investigations that are too lengthy or time-consuming for supervisors, for a line supervisor to investigate. I want to jump down here. It says filing a complaint, filing a compliment or a complaint. Really, everything is right here at our fingertips. To make a compliment or a complaint, you can do one of the following. You can send a letter, you can call Internal Affairs, or you can call the on-duty watch commander. And the numbers are right here, have always been here. You could probably do a Google search and say Fayetteville watch commander, and something may pop up. You may get the sheriff's, but it's right here at our fingertips. And so, and there is a electronic submission form that is also at our fingertips. It says you may also fill it out. Now, if it's an emergency, you should be calling 911. And if it's something if you're out of your response area and need to reach a dispatch, you call the non-emergency number, which is 433-1925. And so I want to hop over, and I think because we got a new website, Can I
add to that complaint?
Yes, you can.
So importance, notice we talk about internal affairs, and there's been dialogue and conversations speaking about us investigating us, right? And the reality is we are not perfect. I've said that numerous times, which is, we make mistakes. We made a mistake last night, in real time. And the importance of we're still going to hold ourselves accountable, trying to correct those mistakes as soon as it comes on. But let me explain also what the repercussions are if we do not investigate fact-finding facts. For individuals like myself or any supervisor or anyone else, if it is found out that we tried to hide something, something occurred, and it became a serious liability, big infraction, civilly and sued and criminally, we could be held accountable if we do not investigate properly, try to hide something. So when I say my career life is on the line, if I am not totally transparent of the fact finding, is not protected from criminal investigation exposures, is not protected from civil liability accountability. So I want to share that as far as that's our responsibility, but it's not just to the department. It can be exposed through a court order, and it has been. We've had judges come and look at internal affairs files when complaints have happened to verify if it was done. So I just wanted to share that of internal affairs. And you can submit complaints anonymously, online, just we get it any form. Just want to share that too.
Okay, so one of the things that I want to show you, which is one of my favorite, I'm not gonna call it a toy, but one of my favorite tools is our open data portal. One of my favorite things. So I'm getting ready to share this with you right now.
Now, Councilmember Ingram, as you're sharing the open data portal, be sure, and I'm sure you'll do this, but I want you to make sure that you're explaining to people what that portal is all about so that they know, because one of the biggest things that we get at the city level is this accusation sometimes that we're just not transparent and that we're attempting to keep information out of the hands of the public. And I think I know where you're heading with this, and I just want to make sure that we drill home the fact that this portal really preempts us being able to keep information from the public. But go ahead, I'm gonna try not to interrupt again.
No, you're good. And Phil, if I skip something, please do, because this, I think to me, this is the most, it's extremely important. Yeah. So this is our open data portal. This is as transparent as we can get under constitutional law. And of course we have other transparency efforts, but these are one of our efforts that I love dearly. And so it says the city of Fayetteville is committed to increasing the openness and transparency of city government. This open data platform provides access to the latest city data, both spatial and non-spatial, right? So you got a search bar here, but we have various things we can look into, right? Various, we got Parks and Rec, Development Services, Police, Transportation, Administration, Education. So I'm gonna say I wanna look into police, right? We're gonna hop over here. Oh, wow. So I can check out all police data. I can check out our accidents. I can check out our arrests, citations, field contacts, incidents, traffic stops. I'm interested in traffic stops. Let me go look at traffic stops. Wow. Okay, so we can see we got a lot going on. What are we getting stopped for? Let me just click some random something. And so we see it was a written warning. It's September 16th, 2019. And what I love is this information is not going anywhere, y'all. So it was a written warning. It was, I guess that was street number. It was on Clinton Road, probably my district, big vehicular regulatory violation. So you get to see kind of what's going on and what kind of stops are being made. So I'm gonna read this right here. The Fayetteville Police Department traffic stop data contains, sorry, my dog Marley, stop. Contains traffic data that were reported from 2012 to present by Fayetteville Police Department.
Still can't hear you, Councilman.
Okay, I'm back. So this data is not to be relied upon for official purposes. The date and time provided reflect when the officer made contact. There is a small margin of error when processing the data for mapping purposes. Therefore, some incidents may either be omitted from or inaccurately mapped. And so, however, knowing this, we still make the concerted effort to be open and to be transparent about what's going on in our cities. So this does look like a lot, but mind you, this goes all the way back to 2012. And so I want to say this is pretty new, isn't it, Councilmember Waddell? It was launched last year.
I'm not exactly sure of the date. We've always had a portal, but I don't think this portal. And I'm not exactly sure how long we've had it, but I can find that out and we can try to get that out.
Okay. And Chief, would you like to speak a little bit about?
Absolutely. So things like traffic stops, it is required by the state every time a traffic stop occurs. So you see warnings. Warnings doesn't mean you got a ticket. That's the documentation of the encounter. If it says citation issued, that does mean a citation was distributed of the violation. But you can still have it, like, that's what the discretion of officers are. But the requirement of us to submit this data up to the state is not even our choice. We have to do it no matter what, and we have to document it. Now, although the cursor says it may have some error, we still do if someone makes like an open records request, or if you want to see a report for a time frame, like 1 year, 2 years, or 6 months of seeing, let's say, for example, we want to see what's occurred. I can only assume, I don't know the data, that from March to now, maybe our traffic stops have slowed down, only because we're in COVID. But I also can do the same prediction when we were in a hurricane season, right? There were probably not that many, but you can still, from demographics of the individual stop to the location, it's all required by the state for us to submit every time we stop, and for the public to ask the question, well, where is it going? It also helps us because we monitor it in some format detail on a weekly basis. When we deploy our resources, when we have a lot of traffic complaints of speeders, or if we see activity going on, so we're able to say, okay, then we're also able to evaluate what kind of stops are being made. Are they traffic moving violations, or are they technical violations? So we monitor that on a weekly basis departmentally. So I want to share that as well.
Chief Hawkins, we have a question in the chat that I want to go ahead and just give to you right now so you can address it. The question is, does it identify demographic information such as gender, age, race, etc.?
That is able to be, it does. I know gender and I know race. Age is on the ticket, so it has to, but I'm trying to see how to do a custom report, and it should be in the reporting. Is there in the mechanism? So it does, let's see. Because thank you, Councilman Ingram. I love the real live things. Okay, yeah. Let's see. So these are already, like, for that question, questions that are already filtered for a report. So we'll get a report that says the location, things like that, but that is information that we have to submit. And only because we have to submit the date of birth of the individual, I can assume that we're able to figure out the actual date time span. But I just know for sure the specifics of race and gender are things that get uploaded. But I don't want to, like you said, I want to go into this reporting to say what specifically goes into that and the location for sure. But I know, because I haven't seen this in probably a month, there are pre-formatted reports to make it easy for the community to not have to create their own report and say, I want to look at this, that they can click into and figure it out. And I'm thinking, can you try the overview real quick for me? Okay, these are some already, looks like, oh, go down, there we go. These are some already pre-formatted reports to be able to look at citations. Go into citations for me. Yeah, there we go. I think, now let's see, go down.
Oh, go down.
So let me say this while you guys are doing that. To everybody that's in the call, on the chat, you have the option, I posted in the chat, the link for the open data portal, so that if you want to go in and tinker around with that on your own, you can do that as we're going through this call. So that link is right there for you.
Yeah, don't drill down. I want to see the pre-formatted reports that are down there. I think we try to make it easy to say crimes against persons, and this is the crime aspect also. And maybe go into arrest for me to see, because that might be also citations listed in there as well. Let's see.
Citations.
Yeah, so citations are typically, can be both, can be traffic citations or like a city ordinance that can be drilled down as well. Okay. There it goes. Age is on there. Woo.
Right there.
Yeah.
Okay, I see it. Yep. So it says age, and you have race.
Race. Yep.
And
sex. Right there.
Right there. Yep.
There it is. It took us a second, but we got there together.
Then I guess over when it comes over here, you see it right here too.
Yep. There it goes. There it goes. Absolutely.
Male, Hispanic, Black, white. Yep. So and you can download this, guys. You can also download it, have your own spreadsheet. And also one of the things that I'm gonna stop my screen share, and it's a kind of trickle over. Also I think in community, maybe it'll trickle over into community policing. I'm not sure.
That's going to be very difficult. Because one, we remember that was the goal that we're trying to create first, how to capture all of our community policing initiatives and encounters, because it's not just one unit, it is every responsibility of the resources, which is the manpower we have to see when we go to a location, because we easily have at least 5 different locations a day, right? Before COVID. So depending on the event, depending on the invite, we try to get to as many as possible with representation. So we're still trying to figure out how to capture that to do the same thing that this data does. Give us a time, date, and location. What was the event about? What are we supporting, and what is, the totality of it? So we're still trying to figure that out. But because these, like those citations, not just arrests, but traffic stops and citations, was an issue for the state across the board. At least that's consistent of everyone knowing they have to submit this data by state law up through the state, so we can be able to see it. We just happen to be able to allow our community residents to view it and create their own report or ask questions about something that they want to look at, a time period or an area or a community. We allow the community to have access to that.
Right. And so with that being said, and I'm only going to show you, and then when Councilmember Waddell starts talking about community policing, I'm going to bring it back up, and we're going to go to the next piece. But this, when you are a part of a community watch, and of course when you're not, when you're part of community watch, you get monthly service calls. So you get a spreadsheet from your community resource officer. I said the title wrong. It's special.
Crime prevention specialist.
That's what it, crime prevention specialist, and they will give you when you go to your community watch meeting. Right now, it's kind of been done via email. They'll give you a spreadsheet of all this calls for service that have been happening in your community. And so, as you can see, we have a lot going on in our community. We have a lot of community watches. We have 156 active groups. And so I will, once we get back, start going over community policing, we'll come back to this. And so let's go to the next piece, which is 8 Can't Wait. So let me do a screen share for Councilmember Waddell.
And you can just still handle the screen share and just click through as we go through, Councilmember Ingram. So the first thing I want to say is the reason we are having this conversation about 8 Can't Wait is because we got some very powerful training, I guess, for lack of a better term, a couple of weeks ago as a council. And when we did that, it really gave us all more information about what we are and are not doing. And so I wanted to be able to really come and share this with the community, because information really is power. And so there's an initiative called 8 Can't Wait, and I think it's always important, and I'm going to put a link in the chat. So if you go in and you Google the 8 Can't Wait movement or the 8 Can't Wait initiative, it's important to know where things originate from. And so 8 Can't Wait, there's a website, 8can'twait.org, and you can really go in there and drill down and see, and I'll put that in the chat. You can drill down and see, okay, who's behind this? Where did it come from? What are the policies that they're looking for? And just what is the genesis and what is the intended outcome? And I think that we all know that this Campaign Zero really originated from the community outcry across the nation that police officers needed to have some measure of restraint imposed upon them in order to make sure that people made it home at night. And so one of the things that we really looked at as a council was, how are these things that are being asked for, how do they impact the overall ability of a police officer to perform the functions of their job? And we wanted to understand, we asked some very raw questions while we were in these trainings, and it was several groups. And so we got an opportunity to just really sit and dig down into what is the motivation behind how a police officer does their job? What is the reason that a police officer may object to any one of these measures or any number of these measures being implemented? And how many of them are we doing, and how well and efficiently are we doing the things that are being asked for across the nation? And so one of the first of the 8 Can't Wait, Shakeyla, if you'll go to the next slide. One of the first of the 8 Can't Wait, and are we able to make, I don't know, is it just small on my end or, okay, there we go. So one of the first functions of the 8 Can't Wait was banning, it's good, I can see it. And if anybody else is having trouble seeing it, put it in the chat. Councilmember Ingram's going to be going through the chat right now. Pause it right there. Okay, so the first was banning chokeholds and strangleholds. And what has been done on this particular graphic is you will see the request from the organization 8 Can't Wait, and then you will see the policy of the Fayetteville City Police Department and how, as it relates to that particular request. So when it comes to banning chokeholds and strangleholds, you're looking at policy WD 4.11, use of deadly force and reporting. 4.11.3 says deadly force procedure. The restrictions, the use of the following techniques, equipment to subdue or detain a combative or aggressive individual will be considered deadly force and used as a last resort. And so what was articulated to us in that is, when a chokehold is being utilized, and I'm going to use the example of Mr. Floyd and how we saw that particular, that the knee on the neck being utilized, because I think that a lot of that, this conversation emanated from that. When that is the resort that you see being utilized, if you ever see that in this city, you should understand that it is a deadly force tactic. It is synonymous to, and correct me, Chief Hawkins, if I'm wrong, it is synonymous to an officer pulling out their weapon to engage with their weapon with the intent to end a life. Absolutely. And so, say again?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so there's no in between in that. And so we do not have a policy that allows for an officer to utilize a chokehold to subdue or to restrain an assailant. And that's probably the wrong word.
Let me clarify. We have never trained on that. To elaborate on that a little bit, training on every equipment we have is extensive. There's also research involved. When we have a taser, when we have an axe, it's not just training in the OC gas. We personally have to go through it. We have to get sprayed by OC gas so we know what it feels like to survive it. We have to get tased by a taser so we know what it feels like to survive it and train on it. We do not train on chokeholds. And I was very shocked and surprised when I see there are agencies that do that truly choke someone out, because part of that is you have to pass out. And we train on handcuffing people. The only reason it's in there because there are situations if an officer can't get to their gun, if his gun is gone and they are fighting for their life, it is considered, if you're thinking a fight for the life, that's the last thing. But the same thing I share with them, you can't put every single thing in a policy. If I'm fighting for my life and the only thing I have is a brick and I'm getting attacked by multiple people as an officer, we're not going to put in a policy, you can't use a brick. But in real life, in a situation, you have to survive. Or if you're trying to protect someone. So it is considered deadly force.
It's deadly force. And deadly force is not the first line of defense. Deadly force is the last option. It's correct. The last option. And so, Chief Hawkins, one of the things I remember, one of the questions coming up, because this is of the 8, there are 6 that we are already doing, that are already implemented.
Yes.
The 2 that are not already implemented, we at length discussed them, and as a council, we seem to be of the same mindset that maybe the request needs to be, we needed to communicate this information to our citizenry, which again is why this was born. Can you speak a little bit to what would happen? And this is not necessarily your wheelhouse, but just so that it can, I'm gonna say it and then you reaffirm it, if you correct me if I'm wrong. If we were to ban chokeholds, and an officer were in a fight for their life, and this was the mechanism, and we're not talking about with someone who did not meet a situation that did not meet the parameter of deadly force being utilized. We're talking about in an instance where deadly force is necessary to protect life.
Yeah.
When this is the case, if we were to ban chokeholds and an officer utilized that to protect life, then that officer, even though they were doing their job and doing so within the confines of the law, would then be subject to
a policy violation.
Right.
Maybe. Maybe. And I'll give you an even better situation. Although we have banned shooting at motor vehicles in our policy, it says it right there, will not fire at a moving vehicle. Have we not, as a community, as society, seen where moving vehicles come and attack crowds? And an officer not trying to stop that moving vehicle is a decision-making possibility they may have to do to stop the deadly force, the vehicle, and that's just an open scenario. So although we have it in our policy, there are situations also that they might have to make a decision to save a life or their life to prevent it.
Okay, so now let's talk about duty to intervene, because this is one of the 8 can't wait that is already a part of the Fayetteville Police Department policy. So duty to intervene, policy 5.4.1. Each and every employee has an affirmative duty to intervene. If at any time an employee witnesses another employee use force in a manner which violates then existing law and or policy and training of the department, the employee shall intervene both verbally and physically if necessary to immediately stop the force. The intervening employee shall make notification to a supervisor as soon as possible. An appropriate investigation shall be conducted. So that is already something that is a part of our policy. Now, we did do some cleanup of the verbiage to ensure what was that, what was the purpose of that cleanup?
So in the A can't wait, what they were trying to say was officers have a duty to intervene. But even though it's by law, officers have, and the council made the resolution to say we're putting our policy. What I saw though, what is not just our officers, it is our employees of the Fayetteville Police Department, because we have over 150 non-sworn that might have the capability of seeing something, and they have the obligation to stop and make attempts to intervene and not look away and speak up. So we put it to not just sworn personnel, we put all in our policies, all of employees follow the rules of the policies that apply to them. That's why we specifically said all employees have a duty to intervene.
And one of the questions that came up when we had this conversation, when we were being briefed on these different policies, the question came up, is there a way for, because we understand that sometimes there's a culture, or there's the perception of a culture of protecting one's own. Is there a way, or retaliation even for that matter, is there a way for an officer or an employee of the police department to give this information and do so anonymously?
Absolutely. They act like they're just a citizen. They can do that. They can do it even through the city portal. The city has a hotline as well. They can come directly to us, but they can even say something to someone else who can speak on their behalf and never disclosing. We're still going to fact find as much detail and data as possible for that. They do have those options.
Okay, and one of the other questions that came up when we talked about this duty to intervene, we started talking about what it looked like for an investigation to happen around something like this. And one of the big hot phrases right now is a citizen review board, because it's as if the citizens desire to have the ability to be able to review the actions of the police department. And I understand it. And I want to say this to anybody who may see this. I don't think that it's that anybody is saying that we don't understand or we're not, in agreement with the fact that there should be oversight. The issue as it stands in our municipality is that your city council only has the ability to provide you with so much information based upon state law. Now, if state law were to change, then we would be able to have a different dialogue about what types of powers we could turn over to our citizen population. But as it stands, essentially, we are bound by, not essentially, most certainly, we are bound by state law. So with that in mind, can you give a brief overview of what it looks like to when an employee comes and they says, hey, I witnessed, Joe, whoever, do this particular thing, and I think it was probably problematic. And I'll utilize as an example what we saw in Wilmington, where the information came out and it was like, okay, y'all are having some very inappropriate conversations. So if that were to happen, how does that look? Can you just kind of walk us through what that looks like from your side?
And so even, I'm going to do a different light. So Wilmington, the sergeant, just like we do at that location, we do random checks. They're responsible for random reviews of body-worn cameras without a complaint, without anything. So what happened in Wilmington is they were doing their random checks of body-worn camera, and that's how they have it. That supervisor has more than a duty to intervene responsibility. They have what's called vicarious liability responsibility of truly telling someone, which is what they did, and acknowledging. An example for a peer or employee that I personally have said, without giving any names, see how that work out. It works out like when an officer approaches and sees something, and then they stop it, and then they immediately tell their supervisor, that wasn't right what just happened. You need to go investigate it. Or they go and they have ways, trust me, of letting someone else know of the facts. When it's a clue or a hint, we investigate it immediately, because there's no reason to hide anything. We really go in for the fact finding, because there may be a possibility of inappropriateness, and we're just saying there's a possibility of they just may not know. So the duty to stop something from happening and educating, training, acknowledging, and say, what are you doing, is paramount. But employees, it doesn't have to be a sworn personnel, it can be non-sworn, have that ability to speak up. And the importance of, when I talk about empowerment of the community, that empowerment is for our internally as well. Internally, you need to feel like there will be no repercussions, there will be no consequences. And that comes out from truly changing the culture of law enforcement, which is a big, big ship to turn. But when people believe that what they do, there's no repercussions, there are repercussions if you don't speak up, just like the duty to intervene. There's repercussions on supervisors if you don't see something and hold someone accountable. So they realize, no, I'm going to hold my employee accountable because there's a teaching opportunity. But if we make a bad mistake or a serious mistake, is our duty also to investigate it.
Absolutely.
And
so,
there are repercussions for retaliation. There are serious repercussions for the retaliation.
And I'll say this, and I don't say this to put you on the hot seat, but I'll say that I have observed that you seem to be very tough on this level of policy. Yeah. You seem to be really concerned about making sure that people are not only adhering to policy, but that they are properly trained so that they understand the policy, and so that if they should violate the policy, there's really no excuse because they have received adequate training.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to...
Because that's my responsibility. My responsibility is, did I train them that this was, besides the criminal law, that this was a policy violation? And then if I train them and they make a mistake, you're going to be held accountable. But I'm also going to retrain you again on that mistake.
Now, let me ask you this, Chief Hawkins, with you saying that, at what point, and without being specific, because one of the concerns that the citizens in the community have is that law enforcement is allowed to make, mistakes and that there's no repercussion. So at what point do you look and say, enough is enough, and this is something that warrants me saying you may not be fit for this type of duty?
Yeah, so I'm personally share. I shared this before. I've had extensive training with internal affairs, working with Atlanta in the unit, and then being responsible for the majority of reading files and making sure it's collected. But I'm also involved because I used to be strictly, it's black and white and just the extreme. But I also understand we have extreme cameras on us all the time, and we are human. So depending on what the mistake is, because a mistake on an internal affairs file can be anything as you're late to work, and we hold people accountable for being late to work. You're out of uniform. We hold that accountable because it's the small things of, are you abiding by casually doing things that you should not be doing, that build up when that gets complacent to large things. So it requires grace, but it also requires what I've learned in training, that and what was established by federal law, something called Douglas factors. And Douglas factors looks at every individual employee and the infraction, and gauges things of, let me see what kind of employee that is. Do they have a history of continually violating the policy? Have they been a good worker? Are they on mission? What's their history look like? Are they veterans, and looking at the whole big picture, what's the impact on the organization? And then taking measurable tools that say, we're going to address you on this infraction, correct you, train you, allow you to grow, but you have been trained and documented, you can't do this again. So that if you do it again, repeated issues bring up to the height where we have to separate relationships of employment. And Absolutely. It can get to that stage.
Absolutely. So I see one of the questions in the chat is there training for engaging with citizens who may be in mental distress during an emergency call? I don't want you to answer that just yet. I want to get through these other 8. Can't wait.
Okay.
Nicole, I do see your question. And Councilmember Ingram, if you will remind us when we get to the end of the 8, can't wait to come back to that question. So the next one that we have is require a warning before shooting. Yes, ma'am. Hold on. I'm unmuting you. Yes, ma'am.
Where are you? Okay, I'm just now seeing it. I guess you're getting the questions a lot quicker than mine.
Oh, you know what? And you guys make sure when you put the questions in chat that you either put them, if you want to send them privately, send them to Councilmember Ingram because she's managing the chat right now, or you can post them publicly in the chat.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So when we talk about require a warning before shooting, and I say this and I say it lightly because I know I received this much training in the scale of how much you guys have to go through. But when we went through the simulator and we had to respond to an active situation in the simulator, I think we all had an aha moment where we were like, what we're thinking is not necessarily what it lines up like. And I'm, when you made the statement, I was very black, very white. I tend to think like that often, but I'm learning that if you don't understand the way that I didn't understand how it felt to be in a situation where you have to think and you have to act and you have to, because I'm not trained in that. Yeah. But when we did that and we specifically talked about requiring warning before shooting, speak to what that looks like, because the police department does require warning before shooting. It's not necessarily a shot. It's not necessarily, hey, I'm getting ready to shoot. But what does that look like?
So what does that looks like? And I can only assume what the 8 can't wait intended it. 2 different things they can intend it, because it's not detailed. They can either say, you absolutely, before you fire your gun, have to say, stop, I'm going to fire, or I'm going to shoot you. That's an option. Mm-hmm. which is communication. Or it can, to me, be interpreted, you're going to shoot in the air, which exists in some policies,
but not ours.
But not ours. But think about it. I'm gonna tell you this: not too long ago. When I say not too long ago, within the last 10 years, mm-hmm. which is kind of scary. So we had, for example, 4th of July, 4 or 5 reports of bullets, celebratory gunfire going into ceilings of individuals' houses. Mm-hmm. The bullet has to go. We're responsible for where that projectile is going. So there are occasions where an officer, they're required to communicate constantly, clear commands, They're going to be short. They're going to be loud enough. That's how they're trained. It takes a lot when your heart is beating fast, you encounter an engagement, and you see a threat that requires you to pull your gun out, and communication, so that the person who is also scared knows clearly what the instructions should be. But there are also times, as we know, whether it be an active shooter situation, and we have to go to a building, and we have, or we get ambushed, and we're running around a corner, and we're encountering a weapon or a gun pointing at us, that there's not going to be a time where someone can say, stop or I'll shoot you. Where the threat is there, and you don't have any seconds, you are responding to it, and there's not going to be a verbiage to defend that. So.
Right. And so we saw some pictures over I think the last 24 hours of a situation that occurred. It was 2 pictures that were on Facebook. Yeah. And I want to speak to what I learned specifically when we attended the training. One of the officers in the picture was standing with their hands folded like this, and another was standing with his hand resting on his weapon. And I had an encounter during the training where I never unholstered my weapon. I just kept talking. And the person who was training us indicated after I had been shot and killed, because I did not respond appropriately, the person who was training made this statement: action is always quicker than reaction. And what he was explaining to us was, as a police officer, you can't necessarily be reactive. You have to be responsive. You have to understand the situation, take everything into account. But you don't necessarily know what the intentions are of the people that are around you. And sometimes you're in situations where you have to be prepared, even if you never have to exercise the action, you have to be prepared. And so when we see physical examples of either this motion or a motion of the hand on a weapon, does a hand on a weapon indicate, as a police officer, some level of fear or intrepidation or jumpiness? What are we seeing in that?
So what we're seeing, and what people have to understand, if they really start paying attention, when I am talking behind our doors, that's our resting mode sometimes. This gun belt gets heavy and putting our hands somewhere. We're also trained to have it, because although it's here, which that other picture, that is also a reactionary strategic position in place. But it does give us, so although, because it can be in our pockets, or it can be waving around. It might just be truly in knowing that person, that's their resting mode, just like everyone else. I'm just here standing by because I'm talking. But you're going to see that across the board but the difference is, doing like this is a whole different resting mode. Like, I'm about to draw on you. Just looking at the whole demeanor, just sitting there, just resting on his hands. You're going to see that a lot. We try to work on it and think about it, but unfortunately, it's hard controlling your hands if you're a hands talker. Definitely can't have hands in a pocket. Hands in a pocket is not an option for law enforcement. Right. Hands in a pocket is totally a danger, and takes too long to react to get anything if something happens. Right.
So again, the policy for requiring warning before shooting, we have implemented that. We do not authorize a warning shot, but the Fayetteville Police Department does have to announce themselves, identify themselves as law enforcement, and I think it should be when feasible. And I think that it should be noted that there are some situations, and I think that's one of the reasons why policy cannot always be so restrictive, because there are some situations you have to be able to know that we don't know everything that's going to unfold, not in our regular lives. So not to mention as a police officer who may be responding to a tense or terse situation. Now let's talk about required use of force continuum.
Okay.
Shakeyla, I'm going to unmute you. Don't remute yourself. Just go ahead and talk.
Okay, so we have 2 questions, and one is from a Samsung Galaxy X7.
Okay.
Is there progressive discipline, and how powerful is the union? How successful are the HR and legal staff in proposing discipline that's going on to withstand third-party scrutiny, such as arbitration?
So to make that question easiest, although there are unions in North Carolina, there is not the same type of union that exists almost like in other states like New York or California, where there has to be true arbitration negotiations made. This is a at-will state, so we abide by the laws of HR and our policies and progressive discipline. This, even though it's at will, the city as a whole, but the police department does follow, like I explained before, progressive discipline. But that's not to say somebody can do one thing and it totally says there's a severance of relationship. And I'll give you an example. And this one is my one thing as a chief, and because it means something, and you may think it's small. And I have to communicate this to my entire department, sworn or unsworn. There's one thing that I have zero tolerance for. You may think it's not big, but it's truthfulness. There's no white lie. There's no black lie. It's a lie in writing, or because we are so required by our testimony, our statements in court to do our job. We need to be able to have our ethics and our integrity above reproach. So truthfulness, and when I came in, I told all the employees, I do all my recruits, if we make a mistake, just own up to the mistake, and we'll deal with it. And even if the mistake is criminal, we may have to sever relationships, but at the minimum, until you go through the criminal process, the truthfulness, you're protected by law by telling the truth. That is the one thing that is a zero tolerance for, where there is no progressive discipline under that I have, and it has unfortunately been tested the waters where people have been released because they think it wasn't that bad and I'm gonna lie about it. So, but there is, and I talked about, it's called, if you look it up, if you Google, it's called the Douglas factors in law enforcement, evaluating, I believe there's 11 things, asking the question for every case after the fact finding is done, not the I think they did something. If you are clearly clear, it got done, there is progressive discipline, and then we evaluate. Let me see this. These are questions I ask. Does officer have history? How recent is the history? There's a difference of you having 10 years ago history or 3 months ago history. That is the same or similar. Even accidents, they're held accountable for when they have accidents for discipline. So we definitely adhere to progressive discipline, but we don't have to worry about unions here in North Carolina, or definitely not in Fayetteville. Did I answer all those questions, Councilman Ingram?
Okay, and then the next, it says, okay, they say, yes, we have that in federal government, 12 Douglas factors, and that's where penalty is derived from. That's great. Yes, you did. So the next question is, has the police department thought about hiring clinical social workers, master level, or BSW with background in mental health, domestic violence, etc.?
That's an absolutely amazing, great question. Thank you. Yes. And to the point where that's one of the, we operate also, one of the recommendations, 21st Century Policing Task Force, dealing with officer health and wellness, truly overall wellness. And that's one of the issues, the stresses of the job, how it impacts your life. So we have definitely, to the point, we submitted a grant proposal for someone clinical specifically to be able to address the department's issues if they have it outside of the normal employee assistance programs, because we realize these are serious issues. So we're waiting, and I think I'm hoping just a little recent feedback. We wrote a grant to truly address that, as like for 2 years to do a test evaluation, so that if the time comes, we see some success, we can take it to council and the city to say, we need this funding for a permanent position. So yes, we have done that.
Absolutely.
And thought about it.
So when we look at requiring the use of force continuum, that's WD 4.1, yep. 4.1.3. So we're doing that, right? We require use of force continuum.
Here's the educational part. What that interprets to me, because I know what it means. Use of force continuum, even though it's a circle, used to mean there's a bottom line of presence is 1. Step 2, there is a voice command. That continuum, since it's going in a circle, that would interpret, yes, we are, meaning that it is not a 1, 2, 3, 4 step and then you get to the weapon, because there may have times that you have to get on a different level, but you have a decision making to come back, de-escalate and reevaluate. It does, just because you pass this one level doesn't mean you immediately go to the next level. You might have to reevaluate what levels, and then you might not have time to go to every single step. But definitely it's in it's a decision-making continuum, decision-making in that aspect. So yes, we train the officers on what they're doing. You do not have to say, have I reached this level first before the call? Have I gone to this level? You evaluate.
So it's not like a checklist. It's more like you should not be at level 5 if the situation warrants level 1.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, and then and one of the examples that we were given for that, you had an officer present who had actually been shot in the line of duty several times.
Yeah.
And he indicated that when he walked in, bullets were just flying at him through the wall. And in a situation like that, you don't have an opportunity necessarily to go from 1 to 6. You're at 6 because you're in an open fire situation. And that's another example where you may not be able to give a warning before you fire your weapon because you are being fired on.
Yes.
And so while these policies are in place, there are exceptions. And I think that that's the point that I want to get across while we're talking about this, is that we do have policies in place, but that there are exceptions, and not necessarily exceptions to permit law enforcement to behave how they want, but to give an opportunity for the protection and preservation of life if the situation arises to that level.
That's correct. The expectation of operating in how you were trained to make those decisions, first evaluating your situation and then reacting at the next level, starting the force and then absolutely knowing when to stop the force.
Right. And you said a key word. You said a key word, Chief Hawkins, and I want to bring it back because that was kind of what we started this dialogue with, was the training. Yes. And so it's so crucial because I think that most of us who are very reasonable understand that all 8 of these can be in place. And if you don't have a force that's properly trained, we will still have situations that we see happening. Absolutely. If you don't have a force that has compassion while they're doing their job, or that has a connection to the community while they're doing their job, you will still see the types of situations that we've seen where there's loss of life. And so it's not just the policy, it's the policy, it's the training, and it's the right attitude of the people in uniform.
And the oversight.
And the oversight.
And so like the internal affairs of, are we checking ourselves? Do we have practices in place, like requirements to look at body worn camera when we see things, requirements to submit a use of force report, evaluating anything when it happens. Those are automatics, just like the automatic thing of you will write down when you stop someone and submit that data. Those are checks and balances that we can check. Are we doing this properly? And can we reassure through an audit procedure that it's done?
Absolutely. So when we talk about use of deadly force and reporting, that's policy 4.1.1. And I believe this is the other one, the requiring de-escalation. We are doing that. Can you speak a little to that?
We are definitely doing that. And that's part of just out the gate training of de-escalation, but we also are always looking for more new, different type of training in talking about de-escalation.
And does that speak, Chief Hawkins, specifically to the question that was asked earlier when we talk about engaging different types of professionals into the police department so that we can have different layers of response based upon what's coming out in the calls that you're going on?
So I think, are you asking about the question, are we trained on crisis intervention training?
Right.
Yeah, so we would love to have someone that's a professional with the police department being able to respond when we go on calls. But because we don't have that, we have training, yes, on the police department, because we realize those have been encounters. Those have been encounters that we have with someone going through a mental health crisis, or how about someone with special needs? How about we train on special needs all the time, how to identify that, as well as training on someone who's going through some type of chemical imbalance episode, or they're off their medication. This is all training that we get, not to the point where we're professionals, but when we see it, we know this is not normal behavior. What's going on? The communication of talking, asking questions, and realize, no, this looks like something else, and to go another direction, especially when someone's in crisis of, I think about committing suicide, think about those crises. It's a difficult, no one wants to watch a person go through that situation. The help is there. So yes, we go through that training. And we're never going to stop going through that training because, you know, we're all, this is life. It helps us in our personal life, but it definitely helps us professionally when we encounter those situations and how best to handle the community holistically.
Absolutely. Ban shooting at moving vehicles. Our policy says officers will not fire at a moving vehicle. So we're doing that. Requires, yes.
Do you want me to hold questions for the rest now? Or
No, if you have a question, you can
Okay.
put it in there.
It says, what percentage of the force are prior military police versus peace officer mentality?
So can't answer the military police, but part of, we of course have a large, compared to other agencies, we're for a brand. We have prior military, I would say maybe, and this is male and female, we might have maybe between 15 to 20% who have true prior military experience and have either retired because they might have retired and they come into this field, but those are extreme assets to our organization.
Absolutely.
They are professional, they are mature, they have life experience, they have structure and following rules experience. So I know people, and I remember when I spoke to Congress, and one congressman made a comment saying that there's some type of mentality that they're in a warfare mentality, and that is not what we have seen with officers who have military experience, that have been through that is more maturity. And there is even when we have officers who've been deployed, we absolutely, in law enforcement, most part does this. We take them through field training again. They go to the academy again to catch up on the policies that came up. And then we also go through the situation of saying, okay, let's just make sure everything's good and we're going to ride you along with someone. That's what we do, just to make sure that evolving back into society, that we have covered and there's no issues that we see, and we make them comfortable because, you know, truth be told, they might have been gone a year and have been in another world, and now so many things have changed to get comfortable to say, we're just not throwing you back out there and you remember all the rules. So right. We take extra steps to make sure we bring back our veterans and our military officers into the fold.
And one of the things, and I'll just give you the heads up, but I want to say this for the purposes of the people who are tuning in with us. One of the things that I would love for us to put out as a result of our research from the internal committee, I would love for us to put out some demographic information about our police department.
That's online.
Right, but I want us to be able to compile it because I do recognize it is there already.
Yeah.
I want us to have a snapshot so that we can show the community what our force looks like, and so that the community can step up and say, this is where we need to kind of fill in the gaps, because we need police officers that are from this community, and the force should reflect the community, because if you're from here, you understand here a little bit better. We talked about that before, but we will, I'll certainly be asking for that in more detail. Now, the other one is requires exhaust all alternatives before shooting.
Yeah.
Speak a little bit about that, ma'am.
That is the same thing of use of force continuum requires exhaustive all alternative, which is we're going to use, if the next level is OC gas or a taser, that deadly force, to me, that's almost a force continuum before you can use anything. Your thought process, that is absolutely the requirement.
Right. And then finally, the last of the 8 can't wait is require comprehensive reporting. What does that look like for us? I mean, we just went through the open data portal, but let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like.
So only thing I can think they're interpreting that to me, besides we have our internal affairs unit and we report our use of force. We have our own internal, but one of the dialogues going across the nation is there's no standard across the nation for when use of force is utilized. We report that there was in 2016 a task force that was established to start creating a database portal for the police departments across the nation to start submitting when that was used so we can start evaluating it. I happened at that year, 2016, be a member of that task force as well. But it's also voluntary. We also report that data to when it's not required, like our crime statistics, we report that on a national level. So I can only imagine, I don't even know why someone would not be reporting use of force, but we do that, not just, we have extensive use of force internal reporting, but we also have on another level volunteered for the national as they collect other agencies' data to be able to evaluate. That's an absolute, we do that all the time.
Okay, good deal. So what, nobody's perfect. No organization is without flaw. So when we look at these 8 can't wait, I'm sure that there are things that are outside of the scope of these 8 particular items that our department is looking at and saying, where can we do better in this area? How can we engage differently in this way? What are some of the things that you as Chief of Police in the city of Fayetteville are looking at in your organization and saying, here is where we need to be really focusing so that we can provide the highest level of service to the citizens of this community?
That deal with 8 can't wait or deal with any other policy?
Not necessarily, we've gone through the 8 can't wait. So just in general with your organization, I want to hear from you, because what the outcry in the community seems to be is, it's good you're telling us where you're great. Tell me now where you feel we can do better, so that we know that you are looking at the organization and saying, how can we improve upon our service?
So where I do that at is my constant internal affairs investigations results. That is every day when we have the results of either infractions, and I look at it to see, is this this is a theme going on, or is this missing, is the organization missing this, and we need to make sure we get this type of extra training or evaluation. We are always, because we always have an internal affairs case going. There's never a time there's not one every week that I'm evaluating at least 5 issues. Just to say, was it a sustained violation? Was it not? What was the case on that? But we're always ever evolving. So we are not like the use of force. I still want to not only look at the use of force reporting this, but to evaluate, are we doing everything? And can we capacity-wise look at what interpretation that looks like? So looking at that, but even more, I'm having all of my policies, because although our policies, I have over 400 some policies, right? Some of them have been in existence for over 20 years because they might be basic and you haven't had to change it. So we are now looking at, within the next month, every single one to say, is this truly covered and can it be improved? But because they're open to the public, I truly am open to say, if you see one that's a concern, tell us about it. Let us share what our thoughts, and maybe we can make it better. But I also do that to my employees. Because there have been, since there are different policies created, where one person thinking that it was great, and then in real life it doesn't work out well, because operationally it's causing something else to cause an issue with it. So we empower the employees also to speak up when one doesn't look out of the ordinary. That's why we put it posted publicly, so the public can say, tell me what this is, and what don't you like about it, and how can we make it better?
Absolutely. And so thank you for that. So one of the things that I'd like for us to do, and Councilmember Ingram, I don't think I sent this to you, so you might not have it in the slide, but if you can find that link where it shows where you can go to see the policies of the Fayetteville Police Department, and we can put that in the chat, because one of the things that I really would like for people to walk away from out of this conversation, I want you to know exactly where those policies sit, because I want you to be able to go in, and you should be able to look at those policies. And if there's something that raises a red flag for you, or you feel we're not doing enough in that area, we need to hear back from you, particularly as we're going through this process of review, because it gives us an opportunity to be responsive to the concerns that come out of the community. And I think what I'm hearing you say, Chief, is that that's what you're looking for.
This is the perfect time, because not only it's open, but it's a perfect time while we're looking at all of them. I've got our dedicated police attorney actually hiring another intern to assist. So it's going to say, look at the crucial ones that might be outside of, hey, you're going to keep maintenance on your vehicles, even though that's a liability also. But look at the crucial ones, look at best practices, and then if you have some feedback, we can truly say, well, how does it work? How does it keep everybody safe? And where can we adjust on it? We are not tied. If we were tied to the policies, trust me, they wouldn't be evolving, ever evolving. But having the input from the community definitely helps us.
Right.
Hawkins, I have two questions. And so the first one says, do you all have psych evaluations prior to onboarding, condition of employment?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And the ability to, if there is concerns, I can send someone to an evaluation.
Okay. And then the next question is, we actually got 2 more. So the next question is, what type of militarized equipment does the Fayetteville City Police Department have?
So militarized equipment, I can interpret that to be, do you recall when we had the hurricane and there we have a vehicle, the MRAP, we have an MRAP. When we had the hurricane, that is one equipment that we got, and we utilize it for us.
Mm-hmm.
But that enabled us to go through high waters and do rescues. If they're thinking, even our Bearcat, which is our SWAT truck, is not a military vehicle. It is a SWAT truck, but what it's utilized for, it protects as a barrier for us to allow evacuations of adjacent house if we need to. People from taking gunshots on. So that's going to be about it. If your visual is identifying that as a military style equipment, those are the only two that visually look like it. One that we acquired and utilize that because of the large tires that get us to be able to operate in a flooded street for rescues. But it doesn't come out that often.
I remember seeing this during, if people remember the pictures from Robeson Street. I believe that this was the vehicle that was on Robeson Street that was helping to evacuate.
That looks like it, but that's not our truck. That's not
It's not our truck. I just want to show something.
Yeah, it's not ours.
That's not our truck, guys.
Similar. That one's a little newer.
Okay.
I'm like, that's not ours. Ours is pretty older. But ours has like, it can go through water, and it has like a ramp on the back, like you said, to be able to allow people to come on and back up and go through large waters. Yes.
Okay. And then the next question, let me stop this. And the next question was, is there a regular review of data for trends which may indicate disturbing patterns?
Absolutely. And that can be patterns for, so we have, when an internal affairs complaint is submitted, complaint internally or externally comes in, we enter it into our system. When there is a threshold of a number of coming into the system, within let's say a year, you get a certain amount of car crash complaint, and something is that threshold, it triggers an alert for us to say, yo, there's something going on with this employee. Go check and make sure there's an evaluation. So there's a system that helps us do that. But aside from that, is also the continuous contact to evaluate if there's one bad thing happening, is something else happening internally with the supervision of it. So, but our system that we have for internal affairs does have the words. Let me see. It is called. I just had it, but it is a system that sends alerts, and it is gauged off of how many multiple types of different. Because, like I said, you can have a car accident. Then, if you have 2 car accidents and a complaint, something might be going on. Mm-hmm. So things like that.
So one of the things that I also want to point out in regards to the question that you just asked, Councilmember Ingram, is that there are also trends that we see in terms of like police stops, or that we see in terms of arrests and things like that. And so I don't know if there's a regular review of that data, but I do want to say that one of the things that the internal committee will be recommending is that we kind of look to see how these things are kind of panning out, so that we can provide some information to the community, because we do need to know if there seems to be a consistent thread of stops, or if there seems to be, and I use stops because of what we remember from driving while black, if there seems to be a consistent arrest pattern, we need to understand that so that we can dig into that and find out where that emanates from. But I want to know from you, is there something in place? I know we talked about the daily updates you guys get.
Yeah.
And so can you talk a little
bigger
about
than
that?
that, it's a weekly update also. Let me see. It's a weekly report because we have what's called a ComStat, which is where we evaluate all the crime throughout the city every week. But just because I do it once a week, the commanders are responsible for keeping it up on a daily basis, so that if they see a trend of burglaries or car thefts, they can deploy their resources. But why we meet weekly as a department is so that all the units can have input and all the units can say, hey, no, this might be affecting this part of the city because of this trend. At that meeting, we cover everything citywide, but we also have the data for everyone to see how many citations are written, what type of traffic stops were made, not in regards to the person, but in regards to moving or non-moving violation. We're evaluating that to see, is there higher, which should be higher moving violations, but is a concern if we see the majority of stops are related to non-moving violations.
Right.
So we gauge that and monitor that on a weekly basis. Now I'm saying commanders and supervisors look at that daily for their employees to be able to report to their commander, okay, tell me what's going on with this, as well as the access of field interview cards, because it might be a neighborhood that you just want to get engaged. What's going on? It's a field interview, a stop in a neighborhood because there might be an increase in burglaries or it might be robberies where they're canvassing the streets. So all the contact is documented. So we do have that data. And what I would recommend to the internal and external councilwoman is definitely sit at a ComStat, maybe 2, because they're different. Remember, you're going over all different types of crime, and It's just data, and you hear the conversations, you hear the questions. Back years and years ago, ComStat was created, and it was very aggressive how it came up. It did a good job, but it evolved to where people want to get rid of it. We have it because we work as a team on the police department. You know, we've seen, unfortunately, a serious increase in violent crime, shooting into occupied dwellings, shooting into vehicles that we know is very serious, especially in the last 3 to 4 months, right?
But let me stop you very quickly, because I want to say this. That is an epidemic nationally.
Yeah,
so
but
it is not.
We take it personally.
I know, but I just don't want. I want us to take it seriously, and I want us to take it personally. But I want to make sure that we delineate between just a Fayetteville specific, because I don't like bashing my city. So I need them to understand that this crime spike and the way it's going about, it's happening. Like, people are going nuts.
They are. But here, let me tell you this though. We compare it, and when you watch it, we compare it by last year's, because we're driven by data. In the beginning of the year, we saw extremely increase, right? And we're trying to deploy people. Then we saw a decrease, and that is almost like a wave right now. But even with all of that, when I tell you the officers are proactively doing investigations, solving crimes, it is very impressive to listen to, watch, and see the results. Even though you don't see it, to see the teamwork of solving crime in the community is very impressive to watch. So definitely.
Absolutely. So Councilmember Ingram did post the link for the policies and procedures in the chat. So if anybody is looking for those, you can find them there. Now, the last piece of what I wanted to go over, and I'm going to do it very quickly because I see we're at our time, and I want to make sure we give room for any more questions we might have. Councilmember Ingram, would you please put up the slides that spoke to what we're doing in the community through our Fayetteville Police Department? Okay. Let's show that, because I know there's been a lot of conversation about defunding the police and taking, some of the resources that are traditionally being considered police resources and putting them back into the community. And so I just want to there are 3 slides, and I just very quickly want to show you guys these slides, and then I'll show you where you can find more information on them. So when we talk about community policing, now there's been some conversation recently about what community policing actually entails. But for the purposes of today's conversation, we're talking about community engagement programs. Community engagement programs utilize the resources because our people are a resource. So they utilize the resources of the Fayetteville Police Department in a manner whereby we bring people into the community and we bring police officers into the community so that there can be a symbiotic relationship versus an adversarial relationship. And so when we talk about adults, here are some of the engagement programs for adults. We've got community watch meetings. Councilmember Ingram showed you there's 156 organized community watch meetings throughout the city. We'll show you where to find yours if you're looking for yours. If you don't have one, you can reach out to us and we will help you organize a community watch in your community. Citizens Police Academy. Citizens can come and they can learn all about how the police department functions. They can see, the various agencies of the police department. They can really get a hands-on experience through the Citizens Police Academy. Quarterly faith forums. Chief Hawkins hosts a quarterly faith forum with and it's not just Christians, it's different faiths that come together and they talk about whatever the topic of the quarter is in those forums. The chaplaincy program, Operation Ceasefire. Operation Ceasefire is actually in the schools. Is that correct? Not just the movies that we see, but also
That's correct. And we'll get to the next one. It's called Educating Kids on Guns. We actually have a program where we go through middle school kids and teach them. It's a two-day session program about decision making, and it's called Educating Kids on Guns. And we're just not in City of Fayetteville. We're in all Cumberland County schools doing that.
That's right. Then we have the Ride Along program. I know y'all have heard about riding with the police officer. I think that's currently suspended based upon COVID.
Yeah.
But after we move through this period, the Ride Along program, Coffee with a Cop. An opportunity to just sit in a leisurely environment, drink a cup of coffee, and talk with your neighborhood police officers. The internship program. Chief Hawkins, take a minute and speak to that because I think that's a big deal.
So I'm I, as you know, love kids, as we all do. But I know that the internship program, this is the third year we had it. And it evolves each year because I believe when the youth that are in college, you don't have to be a criminal justice major, know how the police department runs and operates as literally like a business. It's a moving, connecting. They learn, get that experience, but they are trained and empowered. Especially this year, we have 9 of them. And because of COVID happened, we had to figure out how to adjust that because I didn't want to miss this opportunity for them to get engaged. They are here behind the scenes, and just like we all have to do, train in new habits. Everybody has a mask on. These are the rules, just like employees. But we've given them projects throughout the year that help us learn, do research. They've done so many different things this year alone. I can't wait to get to the end to brag about it. But they also right now started started Behind the Badge series. If you go to YouTube page in Fayetteville, one of their missions that I gave them was to increase, since their youth, our social media network and increasing that to the public. They created TikTok and they're giving ideas, but they have to engage with the teams of commanders and officers to get that input. Then they're learning at the same time. They have a lot of projects that are, they're surprised at how much they're learning and how much a police department really operates. So I'm very, very proud of them. I tell them, I treat them actually, because I have youth, the adulting aspect.
Right.
A lot of them have no idea how to show up to work on time, how to follow rules, and the importance of following rules and communication. And although we're strict with them, it is a learning experience so that they can know adulting is real, and no matter what, empower your voice to know, ask questions. Because, first students might be afraid in this environment to ask questions of peers. We're teaching them how to ask questions to get the project done. And they're very, very awesome. Even so, we have 2 lead interns because they were here last year. They applied again. It's an application process. You have to apply, write an essay.
Is it a paid position?
These are paid, and let me tell you how I paid them. Because the department has what is called, when we do any type of criminal seizure, we might get some funds. So the police department has funds, and what I did was write the ability to show this is part of community policing and education. So I paid them through the summer on an hourly rate that is competitive, and they have helping them teach how to craft their resume to show this for the future. They are paid, and that's why it's very competitive. But we have interns from Fayetteville State, Methodist, A&T, FTCC, and yeah, those are the ones this year that we have. So
That's excellent.
Very proud of the interns. Very, very proud.
So, Councilmember Ingram, can you go to the next page for me? Go ahead.
Yes. And one thing, since we just flipped to youth, one thing I want to point out is, and Chief talked about it earlier, which is the program day. This I have on is a bracelet, right? It's a bracelet, but at the same time, it is a USB drive. Wait, oh, there, if I can. It's a USB drive. And Chief Hawkins, do you want to talk briefly about what comes on this once they finish the program?
This is the Educating Kids on Guns program. And the 2-day program, we have all the handwriting, the assignments, but it's also, we train on a video that teaches feedback. But on that drive is for them, each child, to take home as reminders and information for the program. So all of them get that so they can take it later. But we also, on the next day, so there's a video that was created, and we've also written a grant to have a part 2 of a video created for the program, because that video was probably created 4 years ago, right? We were talking about house parties. Now I want a new updated video, because time changes really quick, so that the next youth, that the class are not looking at the video and say, oh, that was so long ago. So we were able to get a grant to upgrade our video, our movie for the Educating Kids on Guns.
So we also have Operation Ceasefire Movie Night. That's in the community. Go out and share a movie and some popcorn. Juvenile restitution. Tell me a little bit about what that is.
So we definitely contribute, and for juvenile restitution, it's truly a position that is paid to see what are the options for youth that get in trouble, to have a program of restitution to the community, so that they don't go just straight to the detention centers. So giving youth the opportunity to do something. We have a body that's hired to work with the court systems and the police department on that.
Absolutely. Then we have National Night Out. That's where all those community watch groups host a night out. And then the Police Activity League. Talk a little bit about PAL.
So our Police Activity League really is engaged year round, and depending on the seasons. And, you know, we were impacted with a lot of the events. We have not only explorers under that program, but we also we just opened up our center that is like not just a boxing center. It really has access to computers. We have access to tables to have events going on. In our center is right close to Smith Rex, right across the street from Fayetteville State. So it's right near the park, so that when we have activities at that location, we're able to do a lot of different things. So we're just always looking for new ideas and new things. But right now we do have a mini boxing ring, and we have actually 6 boxers that, because of COVID, we had to stop coming in, but we continue to train them online.
And now here's the question. Who are the boxers and who's training them?
So what we did, they're from the community. They're kids.
Are they kids?
They are kids. They're from the age of, right now, I think 11 to 14. And we have 2 that are very competitive nationally from the community. So how we pay them is we contribute to have a trainer, not only our sergeant that's on there, and our police officers that goes weekly with them and train, but we also train and pay for a trainer that is a professional trainer to come in and teach the kids also, so that we are not training based off of what we know in my mind, what we used to fight, but someone who professionally can train them and say, okay, what's the next level? So I hope that answered that.
That's perfect. And so then we have PAL Youth Summer Camp, Police Explorers, Internship Program, and 911 for Kids. So there are all of these programs, and I'm going to tell you the one thing that I hear more than anything. When we start talking about this, people always go, I didn't know we did that. I didn't know we had that. I didn't know that existed. And so one of the things that I think we definitely need to do a little bit better as policymakers is we need to make sure that we are putting out information about what is available to our citizens, because this is very important information. I think that we have committed to having another one of these conversations. I believe that the next conversation, I think what we were talking about was we'll talk more about where information can be located and not necessarily just about police policy. We wanted to start with this because this is the topic of conversation that is on everybody's mind right now. Many, many people are talking about this, and people they need valuable and factual information. There are so many places that people are getting messaging from, but the best place to get information is directly from the source. Absolutely. And so we wanted to make sure that we put out the links because we don't want you to take our word for it. We want you to dig and find the information. And then when you see a discrepancy, we want you to come to us and tell us there's a discrepancy here because we can then address that. And so what we're really looking for in this, Shakeyla, you froze. What we're really looking for in this is the dialogue to open up. We want the dialogue to open up. We need to be able to communicate with all of our partners in the city. And we need to make sure that you feel like you have unlimited access to the information that we have, because that's how we make change. That's how we affect change. Councilmember Ingram, I think that's the bulk of the information that I have. And so if there are any questions, I want to give maybe five more minutes because I know we went over a bit on time. I want to give about 5 more minutes to see if there are any more questions that come in into the chat room.
Right. Were you able to see the pictures that I shared?
No, because it froze. You froze.
Oh, I'm sorry then. Okay.
And one thing to reiterate, just like you all, everyone has laws, right? I have to always reference the laws. I have to always, even though I know them, even though I know them in my gut, train. I not only have to reference my laws, my ordinances, but I always have to reference my policy every single time. And even though I know it, I reread it all the time when items come up. So it is never, nobody's ever offended because we do it as a police department. When we see something go on, we go reference, what does our policy say? To get our minds thinking about the rationale. Okay, I got it now. Every time it gets presented. So that is the other reason why we want people to have input and they see something, may not understand it, it may not make sense, but so we can all get clarity on it. We're never offended because there's a lot to know all the time. So,
and I also want to say this, and then I'm going to turn the floor over to Councilmember Ingram. You get the first word and the last word. I want to make sure that everybody understands that we cannot continue in this vein of all or nothing. We should have open dialogue, and there should be an expectation that we will hear you and you will hear us, and in us listening to each other, we will be able to find solutions. We may not be able, like when we went through the 8 Can't Wait, I hope that I've been able to articulate to some degree why you may not see an exact version of what 8 Can't Wait says, but that you can see that we are working toward making sure that we are meeting the objective of protecting the citizenry in Fayetteville, North Carolina, through the actions not only of policy, but through training and through active application. And so that is a big deal for us. That's a really big deal for us. But we all have to be open to having this dialogue and doing so with a level of expectation that I'm gonna hear you, and you will hear me, and we may not agree on the outcome, but we will do our best to find something that works for all of us. And so, and for the best interest of our community at large. And so Councilwoman Ingram, the floor is yours. And I will moderate. I'll check the chat room to see if any questions come in.
Okay, well, thank you. And so pretty much we covered what was going to be the next part, which was comprehensive reporting, because that was all a part of the 8 Can't Wait. And so we're just kind of going to go into questions. If you have any questions, I don't know if you want to open it up as a dialogue, Tisha, Councilmember Waddell, and just kind of allow people to talk, or if you want them to just, continue to put their questions in the chat room.
So we've got about, I'm open to either. We've got about, I guess we can go about 11 more minutes. That'll put us about 30 minutes over our end time. So we can do it either way. I think that it flows a little better if people will put their questions into the chat. But if I don't, either way is fine with me at this point.
Oh, I do know there was one question that came in via email. Let me go look at those real quick. Let me pull that up for us.
And I'm going to grab the registration link and see if anybody posted something in the registration link.
Excuse me.
Ms. Lewis, while we're looking, I've unmuted you. You can go. I'm attempting to unmute you. Give me just a moment. Let's see.
So
okay, she posted in the chat. Thank you all so much for sharing your time with us this evening. This has been really informative. Is there anything citizens can do aside from educating themselves about 8 Can't Wait campaign to support the City Council with implementation? Absolutely. Absolutely. So the best way to support your council is to tell us what you need and give us an opportunity to have that dialogue with you. And when you find information that maybe you didn't know, for example, if you gained something from this today, please go and share this information, because information is power. And the only way that we can defeat the train of misinformation is to put good, solid information, verifiable information out there. If you notice, none of us have asked you to take our word for anything we've said today. We've presented you with the links for you to be able to go and look at them. And I need for you to share those links and tell people, here's where you can see the information, here's where you can find it. So for me, that's the best way that you can support us with implementation. How about you, Councilmember Ingram?
I would say the same thing. Get to know your elected body. Know that you have other elected officials in other municipalities. You have your state elected officials, you have your county elected officials. And so as well as the things that council member have pointed, help them as well. Allow them to know what it is you need. Healthcare is major, so you will be letting Senator Deviere know what you need healthcare. You will be letting your county commissioners know what you need in healthcare perspective. I think we're being proactive and transparent, letting you know what we have in, when it comes down to our Fayetteville Police Department. And so if you see something concerns about the Sheriff's Department, go have that dialogue with them. And so that would be my direction, is to truly get to know your elected bodies, not just one elected body, but all. I just received, let's see here. It says, thank you for working with the special needs population. The torch run is great. Thank you for conducting more training regarding the disabled, to include hearing impaired and those with mental issues. And I will say, Councilman Waddell, we do have a board and commission that's a major help that could be done with.
Get on the board. Yes.
Please, and I'm getting ready to drop that link in the chat.
Yes.
Be a part of the board and commissions. Applications are due by July 31st, I believe. And Councilmember Waddell is a member of our board and commissions. But we do have board and commissions that talk about our senior citizens and our ADA citizens. And so we have the resources and the tools. We just need the citizens to speak up and be verbal about what it is their direct needs are within our purview.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll say this, don't look to us to have all the answers, because we were not elected as experts. We were elected as representatives. And so when we are doing our job, we are to reflect what the will of our community is. And so that's why I think it's an excellent suggestion that you make, that people get involved with these boards and committees, because we need to hear you. And we don't need to only hear you when it's all horrible. We need to hear you when the waters are calm, so that we can be proactive in making sure that it doesn't get horrible. So, be arming yourself with the information, be digging and learning, and link up with different groups that do work in the community that are, and find reputable people who are really trying to make sure that there's information being shared, and not just, not just the negative aspects. Like, we have to be proactive as a community. We can't continue to be so reactive. And so just really making sure that you are just tuned in with your council, watch the meetings, hold us accountable. Make sure when you hear us saying something that there's something that's actionable in what we're saying, because we can talk all day long, but what is the action in what we're saying? And just make sure that we should be in front of you, giving you information like we're doing tonight. So make us continue to do this. Ask, request, require this of us.
I see a question about what about the Citizens Academy. So I do want to point out, there are a lot of Citizens Academy, and I wish I had my big binder. Last year, it felt like I lived in Citizens Academies, right? However, I wanted to know what was truly happening in these organizations. So within the city of Fayetteville, we have the Fayetteville Police Department City Academy, but also City Hall, City of Fayetteville, we put on our own Citizens Academy as well. The county has a Citizens Academy, and the Sheriff's Department has a Citizens Academy. And so when I tell you, you will gain so much information being a part of the Citizens Academy. I was just flipping through our Fayetteville Police Department Citizens Academy, and I said, we talk about use of force in the academy. We even go through the simulation training in the academy. And so, I mean, you get, now within the sheriff's one, because I got asked, y'all, they tried to put me on the spot. I got asked which one was the best. I was like, City of Fayetteville, for sure, right? And so, but there are differences, right? And so when with the Sheriff's Department, so they'll give you was it an air gun, Chief Hawkins?
Yeah.
Okay, so with
yes.
So with City of Fayetteville Police Department, we get the air gun, and so you can feel and hear the effect of
gas, a tape.
Yep. We'll get a whole belt. And so then with the Sheriff's Department Citizens Academy, we'll get a belt and we'll get a plastic gun. We'll get a plastic gun, but we are walking down hallways with that one, right? And we're turning corners and the things are coming at you. And so to get it from two different perspectives where it feels like I have to go into a home and then there's a simulation in front of me, you getting the best of both worlds of both of your agencies that are right here at your fingertips. And
the
relationship, which is the most important. The most important. A lot of people was like, Shakeyla, do you support the defund the police? And I said, well, you know what? I said, when I look at my district and I look at all the calls that my citizens make, I said, I don't know if my district, could afford defund the police. Now, I get the method of it, but when I first heard about it, I said, listen, my district relies on our police department for a lot of these services. I had a child to say, well, where's Officer so-and-so? Because COVID had kicked off, right? And so they hadn't really been able to see their officer come to the neighborhood like they normally do. And so that kind of broke my heart. And I was like, okay, well, they're busy and, they got to protect everybody. And they said, well, I understand. And so now you have a young boy, and I'm all about, and I put it, I think on my social media, I'm all about to fix the badge. Let's be the badge, you know what I mean? And so not everybody has that oomph to be the badge. There's other things you can do to be a part of being the badge. We have sworn officers and we have non-sworn officers. I mean, we have our crime specialists, crime prevention specialist officers, who I tell you, the senior citizens in my community love them. They love them dearly. And I think they call the crime prevention officers quickly before they'll call 911.
Absolutely.
And you gotta call 911. They do get off sometimes, And so when I think about how my community and my district is impacted, which is a very diverse community, and it's not just one race or one demographic calling the police, everybody's calling on them for something, and everybody's looking out for their neighborhoods. So I just truly want to throw that out there. And also within the Sheriff's Department Citizens Academy, you get to take those rides the speed chase rides and the figure eights and do all of those.
Oh, defensive driving. Defensive driving.
Defensive driving.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so it is quite interesting, and to sit in that seat and it's like, oh, this is fun. But in reality, it's not fun, because when they're doing that defensive driving, they have to think about everybody else on the road and not hurting them. And I remember I used to live in Atlanta, and I'm walking down Piedmont, and it's just like 5 cars that just fly past you, and they're having to be mindful and be alert. And so when we talk about defunding the police, take time to truly dig into your police departments and your sheriff's department to figure out what is it that they're doing. A lot of people don't know we have a homeless resource officer. A lot of people don't know that, but we do have that. And our homeless resource officer is a gym. And so I think that's pretty much all I have for right now. I haven't seen any other questions come through.
Okay. And Chief Hawkins, did you want to, first of all, thank you for jumping on. I know that you have been extremely busy. Thank you.
Just a little. No, I appreciate, first of all, the opportunity, because I totally believe in we think, like you said, we got to get better figuring out how to do that while we still take care of the community, but trying to share this information and have it exposed so people can learn and become empowered with the knowledge. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I know you didn't mention it also, like this morning out there, Food City doing a food drive, right?
Oh, right.
The bank. That's huge. It was hot, but going out there just to donate is good. There's different things the city is doing, just making sure people are aware of it. So that's all. But I just thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Well, everybody, we will be putting out information for some other town halls. I know that Councilmember Ingram has a town hall, a community town hall for her district coming up. You want to share the date for that just in case people would like to participate?
Yes, that is going to be Wednesday at 6:30, July 15th, Wednesday at 6:30. It's going to be at Pleasant Grove Church, which is kind of almost near some race path. Kind of once you get ready to cross over the river, but not fully in the area of Wiener Works. And I am going to try to pull it up for y'all so you can kind of see the date or something. Okay.
And even if you don't live in District 2, one of the things that I've learned is that it does pay to participate in these community events, even if you don't live in the district, because you learn so much about what's going on. And they're all our tax dollars, and it's all our whole city. So, don't feel like if you're not specifically in Councilmember Ingram's district that you're precluded from participating, because I don't think you are unless she says you are. So
no, yes, I'm open to everybody coming. And so and let's just kind of give a really quick snapshot of my district. I have a lot of things in my district. I have the police department I have municipal services in my district, the jails in my district, airport, hospital, city hall, the downtown district, the VA. A lot of major things are within my district. So I think it's truly important to me to highlight the diversity that comes within my district, and all of the residents have to travel to my district to work. And so it says, Let's Build is about getting citizens engaged and empowered by bringing useful ideas to lead and develop their community with their efforts, and most importantly, listening to them. So I did the Q1, I think in early March or late February. And so Q2 discussion is going to talk about District 2, the issues and concerns, just highlighting where we are with things that have already been going on or I've been advocating for on council per my 6 months of being on council. Our public safety relationships, because those are so important to me. Also addressing the quality of life with diversity and inclusion in District 2, which I think is a huge conversation that needs to be had within the district and others who also want to come. And subtopics, creating a path forward to rebuilding and maintaining our district, letting people know there is a standard here. And so as you see, it says chaos or community. I think I did a live not too long ago, and I said I pulled it from this book. I was just looking, and I was like, this is interesting. I saw some churches, doing the title, Where Do We Go From Here? But what stood out to me was chaos or community. And so you are much appreciated to come. There is a link that I would like you to sign up if you can, so I can know how many to expect. If you do come, please wear a mask. I'll try to make sure we have some at the door, but please make sure you wear a mask, and there will be social distancing happening.
Absolutely. So we will be sending out an email once we nail down the details, an email, a Facebook post, the whole 9 yards once we nail down the details for our next town hall, because I think we'll probably do this again. And I just want to tell everybody, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Ingram. Thank you, Chief Hawkins. This has been a pleasure, and I am going to push this out. Y'all work with me because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to download the video and try and get this upload it to social media so that we can all share, and I'll send a copy also to Councilmember Ingram so that she can share it on her platforms as well. But we love you, we appreciate you, we do this all for you. So have a wonderful evening. And Councilmember Ingram, what's your phone number?
910-644-0368. I'm putting it in here right now.
And I am 910-960-7138. And if you need us, just call us. So let me type that in for you. 960-7138. We're just a phone call away. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you for joining us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.